Welcome to the Black Entrepreneur Experience podcast, inside the business, buzz, and brilliance of Black entrepreneurs. Here is your host, Dr. Frances Richards.
What happens in Vegas goes all over the world on Black Entrepreneur Experience episode number 419. Thank you for joining us as we elevate the Black Entrepreneur Experience by interviewing CEOs, thought leaders, innovative thinkers, and Black entrepreneurs across the globe. I'm your host, Dr. Frances Richards. Are you concerned about the iniquities and the inequalities and structural racism that exists in the food system and in communities of color? Rooted in growing food is Erica Allen, the co-founder and CEO of Operations for Urban Growers Collective. Welcome, Erica.
Thank you, Doctor. I'm really pleased to be here with you today and all of your listeners.
You're welcome. I've given our audience such a brief bio because you have a very extensive resume. Why don't you fill in the gaps and share with our audience what you want them to know about you and your business adventures?
Well, that is a very generous invitation to share a little bit about me. I grew up on a small family farm. No off-farm labor, and those who grew up in and around farming knows what that means. So we're a family farm. I then moved here to Chicago, which is where I've lived since 1987, to go to art school. So I'm a trained artist. I went to the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, and then also received my master's in art psychotherapy. So I always kind of talk about growing up on a farm, being an artist, a visual artist, and being a trained art psychotherapist, and how that led me to the work I do now, which is really using urban agriculture, thinking about our urban spaces as places where we can build living economies and restructure how we look at agriculture and community food systems as Black people, for all people, but really as Black people in the context of our health and our legacy, some of our talents and labor that has been used historically to really build the economies that everybody enjoys, and how we can reclaim some of those skills for our own benefit, but also to heal our communities and build and restructure, return to having really these closed loop economic systems.
When we think about urban growing and agriculture, and when we think about like our history, that's what our ancestors did. Why do you think that we've moved away from that?
Because of trauma. I think a lot of it is trauma and terror is what I've been meditating a lot on. Just hearing stories. When I first started doing this work, I returned to this work and returned to work and be kind of retrained with my father. And it was so meaningful for elders to see me working with my dad in urban farming, and seeing how I was taking on that tradition, kind of stepping back into it when so many of us kind of fled the farm because of terror. We were successful, very difficult, especially in some of the Jim Crow areas, all the Jim Crow areas in the South and even in the North, to hold on to land for a variety of discriminatory practices. And I think that's just a real painful kind of idea of disappointment of knowing what could be, the wealth that we would have as individual families, but as a community, if we were able to have had our 40 acres and a mule, if we were able to have had our full rights restored, if we were able to do the things that are promised, where we would be now. And I think there's pain in that. There's righteous anger around that. And then there's just the memory of hard work. It's difficult doing the work, even in the best circumstances. It's physically demanding, it's emotionally taxing. And to think of I just say hundreds of years, because so many of us are indigenous to this land as well, that loss. So I think it's a combination, it's a complex of those things. And we haven't really even told those stories within our own families. It kind of comes out a little bit. Like, it wasn't just moving north for a better life, that it was, but it was also because people had to escape because there were threats of lynching, real threats, and not being able to stay on the land because sharecropping was not a value proposition that benefited us at all. It was just another form of enslavement. So just having that kind of understanding and then reclaiming and rescripting our relationship to land, especially in cities where it's such an extreme competition for space and what we value, and then contextualizing it. There's only so much you can grow in the city. So there's an opportunity to look again at our heirs' rights, look at our lands, have these conversations within our families around reclaiming some of those legacies that really help build a foundation of wealth.
And in California, and I know you're in Chicago, there's conversation around reparation. What is your take on that?
I like to, again, as an artist and as an art psychotherapy, I like to deconstruct words to better understand them. I don't know how we can truly compensate any one of us, any one of our families for what was taken, what was lost. I break the word down into repair. What are the steps of repairing and restructuring our systems and our communities to be able to be whole again? What does that look like in both quantitative and qualitative measures? And that we really need to be clear about what it is that would be feasible and what it is that would provide that true justice. I would almost say equity, but I like to differentiate the words. Again, equity just creates more equality, right? Equity, making sure that we all have equal access. Justice is that gap that gets us to equity. There's a justice that needs to be addressed, and we're very close to it. But we're also seeing all this return to Klan era type of rhetoric. We're seeing rights being rolled back. We're seeing voting, especially in communities of color, but Black communities, with gerrymandering. All of these things they're negative, but I look at them also as positive. It means that we're gaining ground, and we've built enough, I think, power as a community that we're less fractured. We're less trying to fit in or get into corporate ranks. We are in the corporate ranks. Now we can kind of begin to return and look at how we're repairing those pathways within a still very discriminatory arena. We look at finance, we look at how and what kinds of projects and businesses are being supported. Are they aligned with what our communities need, as opposed to another form of extraction and participating in business dynamics that don't necessarily benefit us here in the States, but also our global community. We have that opportunity to do that repair work, that reparational work on multiple levels, from a psychological, spiritual, monetary, place-based education, understanding, having time to rest. There's a whole movement about self-care, which is incredibly important, especially as Black women. Incredibly important to not feel guilty about taking care of ourselves, because we were expected to take care of everybody else but ourselves. And that's really a hard habit to break. It's kind of, it's almost like a genetic memory pattern that we have to really work to not fall into, because it's also kind of comfortable, because then we have to sit with that repair work and of our mothers, our grandmothers, great grandmothers, and so forth. And these are living narratives. They're living narratives that are continuing to play themselves out, that we haven't had space to process, I know. And there's a real yearning to do that, a real yearning to participate in that repair work. So I think deeply of it. I to answer your question in my classic long-winded way, I think it's complicated, and I think we need to articulate the vision around what we mean in all of those levels. And I've matured in a way that I have a certain perspective and vision for things to create enough of a space for the visions that may not be completely aligned, but are part of our Black experience, are also valued and taken into consideration, so we can begin to embrace the diversity of who we are as people, as people of the diaspora and who we've become through all of this time of that we're here. And because we are here at this time, that we can speak to the things that we would like to see repaired and how we want to prioritize the support and the kind of the deferred dreams of our elders. I think about in Evanston here in, it's basically Chicagoland. It's a northern suburb, is one of the first cities that has activated a reparation program. And it is monetary. It's providing monetary disbursements to residents who were discriminated against around housing. And that is, they did the work. The faith-based community, the government, like just community activists sat down and really kind of began to map out what that would mean. And I think all of us need to begin doing that.
What is something that we as consumers or even the African American community that we don't know about urban growers that we should know?
Again, I think it's multi-level, right? You want to know who grows your food. You want to know, especially post-pandemic, I'm sure many of our listeners experienced food access issues, whether it was not being able to leave, or we're all on lockdown, knowing that there's supply chain breakdowns. We want to be able to grow our own food and know if we're not growing it ourselves within our own families or on our blocks, knowing who does. So it's just a security issue. And then it's a health issue. When you start thinking about where food can be grown and you see that there's no spaces, there's no greening, we're reliant on externalities, that also usually indicates that folks aren't having equitable access to food. Even in the suburbs, there's grocery stores, there might be lots of grocery stores, but is there food being grown in environments that can support it? Some of the places we live can't really support a lot of food production, but the idea that we as humans have been disconnected from just that cycle of knowing that food grows from the ground, that our young people, many of the young people I've worked with historically, never knew that a carrot grows from a seed out of the ground, and have these epiphanies when they pull out this green thing and there's a huge carrot. Like just the whole experience that many of us who are a little bit older had that experience, went to grandma and grandpa's farm, went down south, had those experiences even as city dwellers. So I think that is one. I think it is that healing, reclaiming something that was traumatic. It provides a lot of agency to be able to have a space, even if it's, I always talk about a couple pots on the windowsill, some herbs, to, a little plot in the backyard, to a community garden, to, having a community-based farm. That all of those levels are equally important because it connects people to the living environment. And then it's that we have this reciprocal opportunity to work with nature, to heal us, to be able to grow together, to rebuild community. A lot of elders will share, all the fruit trees that used to be all over Chicago, and folks who grew, came up from the South and who grew all the food, and people would share, and there was always food everywhere. And that we have completely lost that. And now there is this emerging movement, where multiple generation movement, where people are reclaiming that and seeing that these spaces are not only for food security, but also healing spaces, educational spaces, opportunities for returning citizens who are being de-incarcerated to do restorative justice work in community that also nourishes, and provides them with a new opportunity to rescript the way that they move in and work in community, and to, just to provide food access, to cultivate a growing and nurturing community. All of those things are possible with urban ag, and urban can be removed really quickly. Let's just say community-based agriculture, because it's the same in a peri-urban, suburban, or rural environment. Right now we have folks who have lots of land, but have lost the ability and the kind of tools, the knowledge to grow even a little market garden, and who have land. So all of these things are interconnected. to who we are, I believe, as people, and an opportunity for within our cities to kind of create attention, an opportunity to sort of aha, like, whoo, all this food's growing here. There's goats here, there's chickens. It's like such a kind of like energetically reactivates people, and they have these memories and they start telling stories, and it's just a really powerful work. And it creates a safe space for young people, teens, who primarily who we work with, young adults in our youth corps programs have never need that. They need that space to see themselves in a different kind of perspective or a different kind of environment. You come through the gates of the farm and you're on a farm. You're in nature. It's productive, nurturing, sometimes tough, weeds you got to deal with, you got to problem solve, and you lose time and space, and you don't have to worry about somebody shooting you or something happening where you're constantly, adrenaline and cortisol coursing through your veins. You can come in and just be like, ooh. And then even that kind of exhale becomes, we need to hold space for folks to then begin their healing, because there's so many things that our young people hold inside. And it's been really powerful over the years to see how just having a little bit of exposure to these spaces within the context of urban ag, it's purpose driven, skill building, there's accountability to the plants and one another, to build that, to have that experience that many of us grew up with, that formed our work ethic and our ability to kind of overcome challenges. All that happens within an urban agriculture as the opportunity, when scripted the way that the work that we lead is scripted, can happen.
You talked about self-care. What does self-care look like for Erica Allen?
Right now, self-care for me is being able to have the space to make art. It means having the space to rest and spend time with friends and with folks who bring new ideas. It's having time to take care of my physical body. I'm have a lot of athletic genes, and so for me, being able to really tire my body out is incredibly important. I'm exiting a cycle where I have not had the space or the energy to do that, dealing with some health issues. So it's all of those things. Being able to take 2 hours, 3 hours to make a meal from scratch to finish, and enjoy that with my son and with friends, and really doing this work to be able to enter into another cycle where I feel good about what the 20-year trajectory to get to this kind of precipice of opening a green energy campus, that is a legacy that will continue to build on all of these things that I've shared and create the economic engine where I can really feel good about how the sacrifices over the years, how they've manifested. So it's not like, oh, I sip some tea and go for a jog. Like, it's not that simple for me. I think that's the case for a lot of purpose-driven people. I love to take care of myself. I love myself and have a lot of confidence in my abilities, but I do carry a lot of responsibilities and understandings within my headspace. So having breaks from that are restorative and fun, but also not too distracting, because then it's harder to pick the thread back up and continue weaving. But I luckily have so many mentors that remind me of the abundance, remind me of nothing's lost when you put the threads down and take a moment to celebrate and enjoy life while also doing meaningful work.
Talk about motherhood and managing a business.
It's a balance. I think that I just have one child, and he is now a teenager, but he grew up with me. 3 months maternity, he was with me at the farmer's market. I made a lot of sacrifices, but nothing that I have like sacrifices like resentment at all. But I had to give up some opportunities to be a mother and would have had it no other way. I'm also a single mother, so that comes with its own challenges. A lot of my work trips or all of those kinds of things, I always had a caveat. Well, my son has to come. If you want me, yeah, I gotta bring my mom and my son, and that was often accommodated. So I was able to still do quite a bit. And my son got to is grown up seeing his mom do the work that I do, and and that he didn't grow up farming. He wasn't the farm laborer like I was, but has worked a lot more than a lot of his peers in the city, and hasn't grown up with a silver spoon in his mouth, which I think is important, but is also an advancement from just generations of progress within on both sides of my family, really. So as a mother, as a member of an organization that is also co-led by a single mother, it's tricky. It's tricky because your child is first in the world that you're trying to create a better world in the most, just using that tagline, is part of being a mother. So I continue to deepen my understandings of those responsibilities and have enjoyed every moment along the journey. Even this teenage sassiness. My son's sleeping actually right now because he's gearing up doing football these long practices. I'm one of those moms that's like, I don't want you to play football. You got that brain. And he's football and baseball, but so loves it and is so disciplined about it and has maintained his academics. So all those things make me proud, but that I can support him on his journey and give him you don't have to do the potential brain damaging, sport, but I'm his mom. I'm gonna support what his dreams are, and do my best to keep him safe, but also know that I'm there cheering him on the sidelines and enjoying his successes in the context of the work I do, which he may or may not do. I hope he does to some degree, but potentially not. Same way that I'm an artist. I wasn't planning on farming, but somehow I made my way back to it. So we'll see how that turns out. But yeah, really important. It's important to me to be a mother, and I lead from that. It's helped me, I think, as a leader, and it's helped me have more empathy and kindness within the spaces that I work in.
I want you to have a monologue. I want you to name this person, living or not, and they've impacted you so much. Name the person, and what are you saying to that person?
I'm going to keep it. That's such a great prompt. That's really good. I'm going to say Harriet Tubman for a couple of reasons. The Big Dipper or drinking gourd is in our logo for Urban Growers Collective, and it is the tagline of our work is Pathways to Freedom. And this idea of liberation and the journey of just Harriet's courage, her calling, all the Harriets, because there are many, who had the ability to lead people to freedom, and so many people did not have the courage or were too afraid or the stakes were too high to leave. And I'm sure that I imagine that broke her heart, but also how many people had the courage to go on that journey with them, right? So I think about her, I think about the North Star, I think about that I use it a lot in just visioning work around having a vision. Like I'm a visual person, so I see it's just sort of an idea kind of bubble of what the thing could be, the garden, the what's coming, and I allow that to guide the steps to get there. And so I imagine and think about having the ability to traverse terrain in the dark, following the stars when the sky was clear, and how much faith that took. A lot of us actually in my circle of practice talk about Harriet Tubman in those ways. And as a, revered ancestor whose legacy continues to resonate. Fannie Lou Hamer, same thing. but also that cautionary tale around putting everything out there for the community and then not being cared for. She was just riddled with cancer, and it was not ever addressed. That kind of like that balance of fighting the good fight, but also, and it's so urgent, but nothing's more urgent than our ability to survive. So I kind of traverse between those two matriarchal figures in our history. And of course, I look at how that plays itself out with the heroes, the mentors in my life currently. And there's too many to name, so I don't want to name any because I'll leave somebody out kind of thing. But just the day-to-day courage of people, seeing the mom with 4 or 5 young ones, without a car, mobilizing to get to school, and just knowing how hard it is for me with one, with some resources. Still struggling, but with some resources, and how challenging it is. So, kind of those momentary glimpses of seeing how far we've come and knowing that the faith and the resources and the networks of connection to be able to move more of us out of sort of this, even like a cerebral plantation mentality of not reinforcing things that don't necessarily serve ourselves or our people, just to be in the game, to have this illusion of success or an illusion of liberation. Because the path to that is not easy. It should be smooth. I wish it was for everybody, but it typically is a lot of work and a lot of sacrifice. But it's less challenging when I think about, and that's why I visit Harriet Tubman in my imaginings, around how difficult it must have been for her. And that the little challenges that I have to overcome are, please, it's nothing. That's how we do.
You talked about stories around elders and when they are farming. And is there a story that sticks out that you want to share around an elder and farming that you know?
I would just say generally, having elders, when they see how we're growing and they see all the food, the stories, the memories that come back, and just being able to hold space. I think when people see my dad is retired from a not-for-profit work, but still doing like a small homestead on the land that he and my mom live on, the narrative of being able to have land to grow food, to feed ourselves and our community resonates. I think about my dad's side of the family is from South Carolina, and my cousins, I keep uncovering all these, we got a lot of cousins. So tracking names and doing the genealogy, and just like, there's so many cousins, and my great grandmother had 69 daughters. And so they all married. And so all these names, it's just like tracking everyone down. But during the pandemic, there seemed to be a like kind of just people had more time to be on Ancestry or whatever, just connecting. Just keep discovering and reconnecting with family that are still farming that we didn't know we were related to. Or, one of my favorite stories, and it's just such an ancestor inspired, it just felt so, actually I have 2, going to a retreat in South Carolina, being picked up at the airport by someone named Matthew Rayford. And when he introduced himself, I'm like, oh, we might be cousins. And then he ventured on to say, oh yeah, I have a cousin up in Wisconsin. You may know him. His name is Will Allen. And I was like, oh yeah, I might know him. That's my dad. And it was just from our name. And his family's land, our names are all it's Gillard. So from just marriages, etc. It's, multiple generations of land still in our possession. My great-grandmother's name is Rosabelle Green. So I thought her name was Rosabelle. Her maiden name was Rosabelle. So I'm a Belle. So then it's like, oh, well, that makes sense. And then I went to Jackson, Mississippi recently, and for a keynote for the Farm to Fork. It was a Farm to Fork convening of Black farmers and folks within procurement to get healthy food from the local farms into the schools, which is incredibly critical in Mississippi. And Jackson especially. for a multitude of reasons. So I came to do a keynote, and I brought Malcolm Evans, who I've been working with since he was 9. He grew up in Cabrini Green and is now 30 and our farm director. So I've been working with him most of his life, more than most of his life. And he, in preparation for that trip, checked with his family because he knew his grandmother was from Mississippi, but didn't know where, didn't have any details, again, to that like amnesia that many of our folks would not even talk to their children about what they were coming out of. So I just think those stories are important to capture, just as an aside to everybody who's listening, while our elders are still on this side of existence. But he found out people were from Jackson. So it was just kind of already like, ooh, this is going to be deep. And on the prep, there was somebody on the call with the last name Bell. And I was like, oh, because now I do this. Oh, your last name, so do you have people from South Carolina? And she said, yes, I do. And I have Allens that I'm related to. So I wasn't even looking for Allen. I was just on Bell. And she's in charge of Fresh Choctaw. She's Choctaw. And so we knew that we were Chickasaw. But then to find out that connection, the Choctaw connection and the Trail of Tears, all of those things stretched from South Carolina to Jackson, Mississippi. So I could spend a year just on that one thread of relationship and just uncovering the narrative and getting to know this cousin who not only did I not know I had, but it was directly connected to the Bells in outside of Aiken that I'm getting ready to visit with my son, with my dad, with my siblings when they have the time. And I connected them. That was important. That is incredibly just within that. And all of that is connected to food and land. Then I think about the work that is happening here in Illinois, in Pembroke, Illinois, which is a Black farming community that has remained intact. And a lot of folks have returned to the land there. You know, the work of Black Oaks and Pembroke farming families, and just having an enclave of Black farmers in the Black Oaks area. It's a really important ecosystem that is dwindling. Black Oaks, sandy soil. But just being able to connect the work that we're doing in the city with just 45 minutes out of the city, this Black farming community that is still resiliently aggregating resources and trying to build a food chain to support us in the city and to continue to restore and repair some of the lands that were lost through discrimination, through not being able to have equal access to market opportunities, and how that's impacted all of us. So those are some stories.
And talk to Erica, our listeners that are in food deserts. I know I live in Las Vegas and I've tried to actually grow some food, and the dirt is super hard, a lot of brick. Mm-hmm. What advice would you give?
I mean, there's like gardening advice, and then there's sort of like I'll start with that. So if you live in an area that you have the land access, then, soil amendments, that's why we grow and compost. I actually don't mind that kind of soil. I assume that it's contaminated and depleted. And so the first thing that we do is activate that first kind of like little engine of food waste, your vegetables, your coffee grounds, all of that organic material, and breaking it down to be able to grow food in. So we grow directly in compost in cities, or the way that we grow, kind of growing power lineage of growing directly in high fertility, rich soil. So if there is compost, you can fill it, put it in a box. You could create a mound in your environment. You'd also need to have drip irrigation. So you want to, judiciously use water and grow crops, usually in kind of drier areas. Rather than going up, you go in. So you kind of grow in like a little bit like in a divot, so that you have, you're kind of taking advantage of the coolness of the earth, as opposed to up here, we want to get as much sun as possible. We mound up, and then that biomass is able to provide enough fertility and energy to healthily grow food. So we're not accessing any of the contamination in the spent soils. People can get their soils tested Sometimes the soil is good to go and it has nutrient and minerals, but most of our soils in cities are depleted and contaminated. So growing, even if it's just getting some bags of compost and topsoil from the, big garden center, or I'm trying not to say the brand name, these big stores we can buy things from, just to get started. When you get to scale, a larger scale, like even 10 by 10 foot space, you want to order a couple yards of broken down manure. Just trying to think of different things that you want to grow in that fertility. Topsoil looks good, but it may not have a lot of nutrient in it, depending on what it is. You want energy, food waste that has been broken down, organic matter that's been broken down, because that's what the root systems utilize to uptake nutrient. If you're just growing in leaves and thinking people who rake and have a little compost pile, that's mulch. And mulch is great to top dress, but it's not going to give you the fertility that you need to grow your food. The other piece is the farther we are away from our food source and our ability to grow food or have access, we call that food apartheid. A food desert. There's a lot of folks, advocates and activists that kind of started shying away from that terminology because it wasn't accurate. Deserts have there's a whole, you live in the desert. So, there's all kinds of life, right? There's a different form of life, but there's a lot of life. And when we talk about food apartheid, we really kind of get into that root cause, that there's things that are separate and not equal, right? Apartheid was we all know what apartheid, separation. You go to one part of the city, there's all kinds of options. There's your farmers markets, your multiple kinds of grocery stores, corner stores, whether bodegas, like there's so many options. Fast food, sit-down restaurants, food carts, diversity, choice. When you come into a community, you don't have the choice either to grow your own food, you have limited options.
Erica, if you conducted this interview, what is the one question you would have asked yourself? I want you to ask the question and answer it.
What is your vision for a climate resilient community? That's the question. So my vision is that every neighborhood, every block has vibrant pollinators. So lots of florals that are food and habitat for the insect kingdom to continue, pollinating all of our trees and all the green life that we need in every terrain, that people globally have access to clean water and the ability to take care of their families, that we're able to generate our own energy and secure the futures of our young people and support and care for our elders in ways that not only prolong their lives, but that the knowledge transfer can be shared in ways that also brings joy. And I see that happening in our gardens and our spaces where we're sharing nutritious and culturally reflective meals that we prepare together, that everybody has a sense of belonging and purpose, and that we're able to respond and pivot when there are stressors in our communities with meaningful resources and not in silos, that we have the kind of economic development that doesn't create more problems for ourselves or others, and that we are able to build and grow and restore our communities, our Wall Streets, our Black Wall Streets, in ways that support, that may be envied but cannot be destroyed, and that we're able to bring our communities and I'm going to, just because you have a global audience, our world into an alignment with the natural cycles that people have been trying to fight and control, rather than flowing with and building and responding in ways that allows us all to be able to thrive well into the foreseeable future.
We've come to the part of our interview. It's called a rapid round of fun. I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I'd like you to give me very quick answers. If there's something you desire not to answer, feel free to say pass. Are you ready for the rapid round of fun?
I'm as ready as I can be.
Your first job.
Gardening.
You relax doing what?
Sleeping.
Your ideal car.
It is my Volkswagen Tiguan that I'm driving now.
What is your favorite comfort food?
Anything with eggplant and tomatoes and some form of fromage, preferably like a smoky brie.
What food you eat every week, no matter what?
Probably avocados.
Your favorite singer or rapper?
My favorite singer is, I don't have a favorite singer. I think the last concert I saw was Beyonce. So I'll say Beyonce, although she's not my favorite. She's in my top. I like genres, I can't have a favorite.
Your favorite dance song?
Anything by Shaka Khan.
Workout or hit the couch?
Ooh, these days, hit the couch, but when I'm working out, my rower.
Erica Allen, thank you so much for joining us on Black Entrepreneur Experience Podcast. Before we let you go, share with our audience the best way for them to connect with you and to do business with you. And feel free to leave all your social media handles.
You can reach me via LinkedIn, Erica R. Allen. I'm also on Instagram. I have a public facing page, Erica_R_Allen. And through the two websites that reflect the work that I co-lead, urbangrowerscollective.org and greenerachicago.com.
Thank you, Erica. That's a wrap.
Thank you for listening and subscribing to Black Entrepreneur Experience. We would love for you to leave a review and rating on iTunes and share with your friends. For show notes and more episodes, go to www.beepodcast.com. Join us next Wednesday, and remember, green is the new black. So keep your bank accounts and your business in the black.